Everything that comes through the Great Lakes eventually ends up here.
The Long-Sault Dam in upstate New York helps control the flow of water leaving the Great Lakes through the St. Lawrence River. It's located about 60 miles southwest of Montreal, Quebec.
With the higher river flows we're experiencing right now, obviously we're using it a lot more.
For the past few months, operators have allowed record flow through to help drop water levels on Lake Ontario. The Great Lakes started breaking monthly and annual water level records in 2019. Lake Ontario and Lake Erie broke all-time high marks set more than 100 years ago. Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and Lake Huron each came near peak levels set in the 1980s.
The Great Lakes have always been unruly neighbors, but things are getting extreme these days.
Along 10,000 miles of shoreline in 8 states and Canada, the high water is causing problems. Beaches have disappeared and infrastructure is being damaged. Repairs are costing millions. Erosion has sent homes tumbling off bluffs.
9-foot waves came in, got underneath the concrete break wall, lifted it right up 3 or 4 times, and just smashed it.
Lake levels have always risen and fallen over time. Precipitation from rain and snow and overland runoff pushes lake levels up. Evaporation pushes lake levels down. But experts say there's another factor in play now: climate change.
Climate change is increasing the intensity of storms and rainfall, helping erode shorelines and increase the amount of water entering the lakes.
Data on Great Lakes water levels goes back all the way to 1860. When researchers crunched the numbers, they found something else notable about the recent rise in lake levels.
The first 2 to 3 years of that surge were the most rapid rate of water level increase ever recorded on Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and Lake Huron. So in other words, we look back at every single 2 to 3 year cycle in water levels, and never before had water levels risen that quickly.
Scientists say that lakes have been swelled by a multi-decade period of increased precipitation, while evaporation rates have varied.
When you look at an individual event, it's really impossible to point to it and say, this is because of climate change. We really need to look at a long sequence of events and ask the question, what's the best explanation for this event? And right now, the changes we're seeing in precipitation abundance going up for a 20 to 30 year period, as well as this variability in evaporation, the best explanation for that is what we would have expected from climate change.
The impacts are being felt in the growing intensity of a phenomenon called a seiche, which strikes Buffalo, New York on the east end of Lake Erie.
Last April we had a major ice seiche which damaged the breakwall and took out a lot of our boardwalk. We repaired that, and then starting Halloween of this year we had 3 major seiches that took down the dike, flooded Times Beach. We'd never seen that before.
Lake Erie has always experienced seiches, but high water levels have made them much more intense. Environmental activists in Buffalo want the city to expand shoreline green space to help absorb this kind of flooding.
Because of the damage to the breakwall and the dike, the place floods like that. And if we develop this into a barrier island concept, we'll have a better chance of lessening the impact of these tremendous seiches that we've been seeing and the high water levels.
So a seiche event that suddenly leads to a spike in water levels, when water levels are already high, is probably going to induce flooding. And the flooding is going to be unexpected and impactful and not good.
That's what happened on the other end of the lake last spring. In Port Clinton, Ohio, flooding plagued the waterfront for months. The city declared a state of emergency and closed its beach after erosion exposed buried utility cables.
The triple whammy. The heavy rains in the springtime brought the river level up, the record high level of the lake brought the water up, and the seiche brought the water up. It was the perfect storm. And it wasn't just a one-time event. There were 40-some instances over a multi-month period where we were putting out barricades and the folks here had to shut down and go home.
How far does the water go?
It will make it all the way to Perry Street. I would estimate that's maybe 400 or 500 feet from the river to the main intersection in downtown.
High water caused severe flooding along the Lake Ontario coast in 2017 and 2019. That rekindled a debate about Great Lakes outflows. the amount of water flowing through the dams on the St. Lawrence River is regulated by the International Joint Commission, or IJC, under a plan designed to juggle the competing interests of shipping and downstream cities also concerned about flooding. New York residents say the IJC is shielding the downstream city of Montreal while they're being inundated. This spring, under pressure, the IJC said it would review its plan.
Plan 2014 went into effect January 1, 2017. We've had 2 record years in 17 and then even higher in 2019. Our point is that those rules are not fair, and they are unfair to the benefit of the folks downstream and to navigation.
The IJC blames the flooding on abnormally wet conditions. Scientists tend to back that up, but activist groups say the water level regulation is also a factor.
A lot of people say to me that, well, the water in the lake is all Mother Nature. And my answer is, it's not all Mother Nature. There are diversions, where the man-made diversions, where they're diverting water into the Great Lakes. There's climate change is a factor on it. But what affects climate change? Man. The water coming in is man-made, the climate change part is man-made, and the way they're controlling the dams up at the Robert Moses-Saunders Dam, that's man-made.
Water level forecasters say we're in for another wild ride along the shoreline this year.
The entire basin is soaked, and so much water from the upper lakes right now is going down into Lake Ontario. But because Montreal and the Ottawa River are so flooded right now, there's nowhere for the water to go. And so Lake Ontario water levels are rising as well. That's unique in the historical record.